Hey, welcome to episode 4 of Tales from the Post. I'm your host, Shaggy. We have in the studio today Chief Warrant Officer 4, Dale Barnes, otherwise known as Chopper at the local VFW. He ran medevac in Vietnam. We're going to have a great conversation today and listen to some of his stories. So thanks for coming to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess let's get right into it. You want to start with family background?
I'll start a little bit with, I was born and raised on a dairy farm in southeastern Minnesota. And my dad got into the Army Air Corps at the end of World War II.
The predecessor to the Air Force.
Yes. That was the old Army Air Corps, and he was a flight simulator instructor at MacDill Air Force Base out here in Florida. Yeah, this was mid to late 40s. And he really never talked too much about it, but he was given a choice of, after the war, either going overseas, being deployed, or getting out. And he decided to get out, which he always regretted. He should have went overseas and stayed in. But he came back to Minnesota and took over his father-in-law's farm. And he was a farmer for years and years. So I was born and raised on the dairy farm, which I don't know if you know much about dairy farms, but it's a
hard job.
365 days a year. Milk the cows in the morning, milk the cows at night.
Oh, that was before they had the cow breast pumps, the machines that you just strapped.
We had the machines too.
Did y'all?
Oh yeah.
When did the machines come out?
Oh gosh.
Because I remember, I've seen growing up as a kid watching old cowboy westerns and stuff.
I'm talking probably the early 50s.
Okay.
Because I was born in 48. And at the time we had the machines that you would set and move underneath, hook them all up. The only problem is when the power went out.
You had to milk in my hand.
There you go.
Grabbing cow titty.
Takes a little longer to do it that way when you got, we only had about 28, 30 cows.
Okay,
milk cows.
So it's not bad.
So, yeah. And back at that time, they had the meat lockers in the town, and we would raise one steer every year, be butchered for meat. And we had probably half dozen pigs. We had chickens. They were running all over the place.
I got chickens right outside the studio. I don't know if you saw them.
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't see.
Yeah.
Dinner? Oh, no.
Layers. Breakfast. So your dad's military service, did that impact on your decision on going in? Or were you like...
Actually, no, it did not. I had a neighbor. He was I think he was a commander in the Navy Reserve.
Okay.
And a pilot. And on the weekends, from up in the Minneapolis area, they would fly a helicopter down, land over on his farm, and pick him up and take him back for...
He had a personal helicopter, duty. Like the military would send a helicopter. What was this guy's rank?
Yeah. You got rank?
Yeah, what was his rank?
It was I'm not sure. I think it was the equivalent of a full colonel.
Oh, full bird colonel.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
because I know they ain't sending that shit for no privates.
So that got me interested in helicopters right there. When I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Minnesota for 2 years. Since I was a kid, I either wanted to be a pilot or a lawyer. Then I got married, and that kind of did end the full-time college, which I had. So when they found out that I was not full-time in college anymore, Uncle Sam decided that, Vietnam was going on strong. So I started looking. In fact, my neighbor, I went to the naval base with him up there.
You're going to dodge the draft by enlisting directly.
Yeah. But of course, you had to have a 4-year degree to get into any Navy or Air Force flight program. The Army, however, had a high school to flight school for helicopters.
Thank you, low standards.
So all you yes, so all you needed was high school education.
So you were overqualified because you had some college training.
Yeah. Well, coming from the farm, I've never, I don't think I'd ever been in the helicopter
I
till I
can't
went in the
imagine a
Army.
reason a dairy farm would need one unless you're running like thousands of heads of cattle.
So anyway, I took the test for the Army, the flight aptitude test, passed it, had to go through a class 1 physical.
Oh, where they looked in your butthole and made you walk around on your
Yeah,
knees.
you couldn't be colorblind, you couldn't, anything like that with your vision. You had to be 20/20 on the vision and everything.
If it makes you feel better, they still do that to new soldiers.
Yeah.
To this day, like they still look inside your butthole. It's a very uncomfortable experience. They make you strip down, do like the duck walk and walking around on your knees.
I don't recall doing any of that.
They smacked me on the ass, kept calling me Susie. Yeah. They made me wear a blonde wig. I'm starting to think this isn't part of the unprocessing.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'd got my notification to take my physical for the draft. So
wait, hold on. So you already are processing to be in the military through MEPS and whatnot, and you get a letter saying, "Hey, we're going to draft you."
Yeah, that was before I'd signed in any paperwork or anything to go in. I talked to the recruiter, and I signed up delayed enlistment because I wanted to wait till 2 months till my daughter turned 1 year old. So
Family
I got the
first.
delayed enlistment, signed the paperwork, I was in. Got home from doing that day, and I had my letter in the mail. Come to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. So I called.
Fort Lost in the Woods. Oh, shit.
Yeah, so I called the recruiter, and he said, "You're already in. Throw it in the garbage." Well, when I went in May of '69, I went through my basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Oh, shit.
And we're talking May, June, July.
You just had a horrible military experience. It's like they're going to send you to Fort Polk, land of mosquitoes and hatred, and there's not a lot of
And
shit
heat.
down there. Yeah, and heat, and it's humid. It sucks. And then you're like, you know what? Even if you wouldn't have enlisted, they were just going to send you to Fort Lost in the Woods, which that state is so bipolar. It'll be cold in the morning, hot in the afternoon, tornadoes.
This wasn't cold in the morning.
Oh no, whenever I was there, it would get cold in the morning, but by the afternoon, it's hot as shit.
And of course, they had South Fort and North Fort. And I guess I was kind of lucky in a way to get to North Fort, because the ones who were in South Fort had to march out to the training areas and everything. We were in North Fort, which was a little ways farther away, so they bussed us. Then actually, after basic training, I had some health problems as a kid. So they sent me to Fort Sam Houston, had to go through a bunch of tests and everything. They all went okay. So then I was assigned to Fort Walters, Texas. And
I don't know where that's at.
that is just to the west, probably 40, 50 miles from Dallas, Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's where all the primary helicopter training was at that time.
Okay. Because I think Rod told me it was Fort Rutger.
That's for the advanced helicopter training at that time.
Okay.
Now,
well, I mean, that was separate. He was scout, observation, and whatnot, where you were on the medical side. So it makes sense that they want to keep y'all by Fort Sam Houston. Is that where they trained medics at the time?
At Houston, Fort Sam Houston, yes.
Yeah. So it makes sense that they want to keep you in a relatively close area.
Before they actually had the training at Fort Walters, Texas, they had training at Fort Sill,
Oklahoma?
That was way back before my time.
Oh, well, for us, it was artillery.
Yeah.
That's where they train all the artillery.
Oh, yeah. So after 5 months of, you start out with about 3 weeks of officer training to be an officer.
Like OCS?
Yeah.
Officer Candidate School?
You go through that, and then you start flying. Then it's a combination of you go to class half a day, flying half a day. So they teach you how to fly, and
So did you train on the TH-55s?
TH-55. And
little bitty.
yeah,
I was
two-seater.
Yeah, Rod told me about it and how it was like a flimsy thing. It was like if you crash, you just fix it and get back up.
And, well, that was the OH-6, which he crashed.
Oh yeah, he crashed the OH-6 and Loaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With these, and you learned on there was no governors or anything like that on the aircraft, and it was a recip engine.
Yeah, I'm guessing you had like a experienced pilot in the passenger seat.
You actually had to manually control the throttle because you increase power, it's going to put drag on the engine, so you have to keep the engine at a certain RPM as you're increasing power.
So wouldn't they go hand in hand?
Yeah, but you got to learn how to do that. You got the throttle.
Yeah, you give it the throttle, the RPMs are going to go up.
So, and then when you put it back down, you got to reduce the throttle, or the RPMs are going to go through the roof.
Okay.
Make sense?
No, not really. I'm trying.
But
I'm paying attention, I swear. It's just I'm not that smart.
It's unlike it is today, where everything is,
push button go.
Governor on it. You set the throttle, and then you go from there. You don't have to jockey with the throttle or anything like that. So much easier today.
Okay.
But
I wouldn't know. I've never flown.
It was good training at the time. After that, we went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, for 4 months. And that's where we got our so-called instrument training and advanced into a Huey. And most of the time, the Hueys you were either in an A model or B model.
Okay.
Now, if you got a D model, ooh, that was something.
What was the differences?
The difference was just the when they were made, and also the engine.
So it wasn't what they were.
The D model was a lot more powerful than the A or B.
Okay, I thought it was like equipment and whether like so you have the OHs, which are observation helicopters. You have AHs. Some Hueys worked as OHs, right?
They were UH, utility helicopter.
A UH, okay.
Yeah, AH was attack helicopter.
So Hueys were more flexible. They could be used as an assault or an observation, or medevac in your case.
Right. And they also had the Charlie model gunship.
That would have been my favorite.
But if they're loaded up with ammo, you kind of got to bounce yourself down the runway, and you hit a bump, and because just to have the power to carry all that ammo and everything.
Yeah, never mind. It's not my favorite anymore.
No, I got in one time. The guy was going to show me, because we'd sit there. Once I got to Vietnam, after back then you graduated from flight school, 4 months at Fort Rucker. They'd pin your wings on you one day, and then the next day they'd pin your W1 bar.
So your flight school also got you your warrant officer rank.
Yes.
So what were you going through basic and stuff as like a...
Well, I went through basic training as an E2 because of the delayed enlistment time. And then in flight school, we all got E5 pay.
So you wore sergeant?
No, you didn't. What?
Because I know officer candidate school, whenever I was going through, they take the rank off and they get a patch that says OCS on it.
Oh, yeah. We had a WOC.
Oh, so warrant officer class, something like that. Warrant officer candidate.
Yep. And back at that time, we were putting through probably around 100 every 2 weeks, pilots.
Damn.
But
Well, I mean,
yeah, back then,
Vietnam, y'all lost a lot of pilots.
yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, we graduated '96 in my class.
That's crazy.
So yeah, and had a friend of mine that was from Arkansas. Anyway, he knew a senator, and he wanted to go to medevac,
Okay.
fly dust off. So he had actually got the senator because there wasn't a class starting supposedly after we graduated from flight school. But just so happened, all of a sudden, there's a class available. So anyway, we went from flight school. They pushed 5 months of training into 5 weeks at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. It was actually, we were W1 at that time, and it was training and partying.
Warrant officers still maintain that tradition of partying.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
so much training, but a lot of partying.
Oh, yeah. After that 5 weeks, I had a little vacation time or leave, and straight to Vietnam.
So you never went to a unit here stateside? You just immediately got put into...
Yeah, straight to Vietnam, and then we got assigned to our units over there. And I was assigned in medevac unit, dust off, at Chu Lai.
We still utilize that call sign.
Yeah.
For all medevac.
In Chu Lai, which was in Southern I Corps. Vietnam was divided up into 4 areas. I Corps was north. The northern border was North Vietnam. And then
so north of the Central Highlands?
Huh?
North of the Central Highlands? Like north of Dak To?
Oh, yeah. Pretty good mountainous area and everything over there. And you actually learned how to fly pretty quick.
A lot of jungles and stuff up in the northern side?
Yeah. Yep. So got up there, and of course, depending on how you did flight-wise, some guys took 4 or 5 months to make aircraft commander. There was a lot of us that made it in 2 months.
So your promotion was based on how many flight hours you had?
No.
How many missions you did?
No.
What was it based on?
At that time, after 1 year, you made W2.
So that's when you become chief.
Yes.
Because that's CW2, right?
Right.
Because 1 is just WO1 and then CW2 all the way up to CW5.
Yep. It all went by time and the number they could promote and everything like that.
But all that helped with your promotion? Like, because we had waivers and stuff. If you did so many missions or you were a PT stud or you're a great shot, they would kind of give you points and kind of elevate you faster than someone else that was a shitbag.
No, it was a lot on. We had officer evaluations. You had your rater, senior rater. So every year you would get a report. They would write, your rater would write a report on you, how you did and everything. Then it'd go up to the senior rater and he would make his comments. Then that went in your records.
So, speaking of your reports, they must have had a lot of good stuff about you because you had, let me pull up your notes, because you had a lot of flight time.
Whoa.
450 to 500 hours of flight time?
In Vietnam?
Or no, so I have 700 hours of flight time.
Right.
Oh, no, the missions, you ran 450 to 500 missions.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
700 hours of flight time.
That was just nothing in Vietnam.
That was 1 year, though, right?
Yeah. And we had pilots that were getting 1,000, 1,500 hours in that 1 year.
Well, y'all's was medevac. Y'all would go out, get people, come back. Where you had people like Rod Love, who was episode 2. He was out flying, trying to get shot at out in the jungle and whatnot. They had a lot more flight time because they didn't have one location to come back to. They were doing circles and But 700 hours for medevac, that means a lot of people were injured or already gone.
Yeah. Just about every day.
I mean, that's
They get in a
depressing.
firefight somewhere, or there was times also where you get a guy was sick, or step on a punji stick or something, that we had to pick him up too and take him back to the hospital.
It's sad that that's the highlight of the day. It's like, oh, they weren't shot or blown up or in pieces. So,
And actually, in Vietnam, I had the attitude that whatever happens, happens. I'm there to do a mission. I'm there to fly a mission. You know,
I think
we actually had a lot of pilots that were so scared they were going to get killed in Vietnam that they'd end up doing something stupid and getting killed. Does that make sense?
yeah, too cautious can be
Yeah.
can kill you as well. But so can complacency.
Yep. But if, I didn't worry about it. We got shot at all the time.
Oh yeah, y'all were unarmed
And
like that. I mean,
oh yeah,
you're going in there into a hot LZ, right? Because someone's down for some reason.
yep.
You can't have firearms on you because you're medevac.
Oh, I had a 38.
Oh, well, I mean, you didn't have
No, you had your personal.
Yeah, you had no 20 millimeter. You had no door gun or M60.
No.
So
So
it's
yeah.
going into a hot
Now,
LZ to get somebody out.
We did have gunship coverage in most of the hot LZs. We'd have the gunships with us.
The Hueys
They'd
that you were talking
suppress
about.
Hueys, Cobras.
I always forget about the Cobra. I don't know why. I always forget about the Cobra. Maybe because they didn't play Fortunate Son from it.
Yeah, but they go through that. Now, if we were en route and there was no gunships available, it had to be a consensus of the crew. The whole crew would have to agree: do we go or do we wait until we can get gunships in there? I never had a crew tell me to wait. We would go.
Lives are at risk.
Gunships or not. So we'd go, pick them up.
Going into hot LZs in unison, even if y'all didn't have gunships available.
Yes.
That's where we left off at.
I never had a crew that refused, said, oh, no, I don't want to go until we have gunship coverage. We'd go into a hot LZ, no gunship coverage, pick up. Now, I will say, for the most part, if we were going into a hot LZ and they were in conflict with the North Vietnamese, the NVA,
yeah,
they respected the Geneva Convention more. So
then
a lot
the
of
Viet
times,
Cong, or
yeah, a lot of times they'd stop contact when we were landing to pick up the wounded, or they would not shoot at the helicopter. We'd get out of there and be on the way back to the hospital, and the unit would say we're back in heavy contact again. So they did respect a little bit. Now the Viet Cong,
anything
the
goes.
Red Cross was like a target,
Yeah.
They didn't care.
How many helicopters did you end up losing or having to swap due to damage? Didn't keep count.
I really don't know. We had one helicopter in our unit that come out of an LZ, and you stay low until you get ways out, and then climb up to altitude out of the 1,500 feet out of the range of the small arms fire. And they came up the hill, and there was a loach like rod flew, and they come up together in midair.
They hit each other?
They hit each other.
Oh, shit.
We lost all of our crew on that one. They all perished. The guy in the loach was back at the club that night.
Drinking.
Broken arm.
Damn.
Which is amazing. The helicopter that Rod flew was like an egg. So when it hit the ground, it just roll. But now I was going to say, another part of going out on these missions, there'd be a lot of times where there was actually no place to land. They were in a jungle.
The ground couldn't create an LZ? Shape charge the
we
shit
had
out
a
of
jungle
it.
penetrator, which is mounted on the right side of the helicopter that the crew chief would use. We would have to stay at a hover over the trees, put that jungle penetrator, and it was probably about like that, and it had 3 prongs that come out. And
What did it do?
you put that down on a cable, heavy cable, and they would put the injured on that, strap them to the seat,
Okay.
and we would pull them up through the trees and into the helicopter. And sitting up there above the trees, you couldn't move. Once that cable goes down with the penetrator, you're there. So you had to maintain a steady hover. And if you hear a gunfire, you just sit there.
Sit and duck.
Yep. So that was, a little nerve-wracking, but like I said before, there to do a mission. We're there to bring the wounded out. That was our job.
Strictly wounded? Did y'all bring back any KIAs? Or because we never leave anybody.
No.
And I'm wondering who brought them back. Because a lot of it for us was medevac.
A lot of them were that way on the way back. I tell you, our medics, I would probably trust more than a lot of the doctors I know. They were very proficient in their job of taking care of the wounded on the way back to the hospital.
They did a lot with a little.
Yes.
Because you don't have, a medevac chopper is not going to have all the luxuries of an ambulance here in the States.
No.
Did y'all even carry defibrillators or anything?
No.
Exactly. Point proven. Right? Like y'all are doing a lot with a little. And I'm sure you had a lot of lives saved. I mean, 450 to 500 missions. Even if that's one person per, which I know a lot of it times it wasn't, right? Like it was multiple cats.
A lot of times we'd pick up 3 or 4. We could pick up, most of the time we'd pick up only 2 major wounded, but we could carry, 4 or 5 other that were needed to go back, but they weren't critical. Anyway, I made it through my year in Vietnam. I never got hit, got the aircraft shot up, never got shot down. I had some aircraft problems where we had to land different places, but so I never really wanted a Purple Heart.
I don't think anybody wants a Purple Heart. Or at least, let's scratch that. I don't think anybody wants to earn a Purple Heart.
No.
There's people that want a Purple Heart, but what it takes to earn a Purple Heart, they don't want to.
Yeah. For a dust-off pilot, I feel pretty fortunate that I never got hit. I never got shot down and got out of Vietnam safe.
And this is your first tour?
Yeah.
You gave them 2 more times to do shit. Well,
but then
not the Vietnamese, but
get back to the States. We fly back into Oakland, and we were told, take off your uniforms, put on civilian clothes, going back to your homes.
I hear that a lot with Vietnam vets too, because the protesters would get violent, and
it was probably just as dangerous at that time back there than it was in Vietnam. I mean,
that's sad.
And I often think back, if we would have had back then what we have today for our veterans coming back.
In terms of support or in terms of mentality?
Support, VA support, like your Wounded Warriors and T2T, all of those things.
T2T.
Tunnels to towers.
Oh.
Towers to tunnels. But yeah. And they do a lot for vets. Back then, we didn't have anything like that to really help out the vets.
Well, I mean, a lot of that was birthed due to the internet, so a lot of people could share grievances and
Right.
share stories. Like this channel, for example, it's every story told is hopefully there's another vet out there that's watching that's like, oh, I went through the same stuff. I'm glad I'm not alone. It adds a layer of relatability to us because the military service isn't that big in its entirety.
Yeah.
But just the fact that other people's out there, kind of like how chat rooms were, even whenever it comes to like video games, you no longer needed strategy books because you could talk to other people that found secrets out and whatnot. The internet changed a lot of that.
Yeah.
And something about that was discrepancies came out. It's like, or this business isn't truly doing this, or what have you. So, like VA grievances, it wasn't just that one person complaining about the VA and this person complaining about the VA. They actually met up and everybody shared their experience. Like, man, I've been having problems with that system too. So we should do something. And it allowed the private side of our country to kind of come together and create tunnels to towers, Wounded Warrior Project, QRF Up, just all these things.
Yeah.
And that, I think the internet.
The VA is doing a lot more for veterans now than it did back then. I mean, you know, it was like pulling teeth to get anything done with a VA.
In a way, it's still kind of that way too. Just I wouldn't say it's as bad.
I'll tell you, it's a lot better than it was.
Yeah, hopefully they
30,
learned from
40
their
years
mistakes.
ago.
But anyway, so you're back from Vietnam. You're here stateside. What base do you go to?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay. Home of 82nd.
Home of the 82nd. I was assigned to the aviation section, 3rd Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division.
Oh, you're a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, Athletic Alcoholics. Fuck, I mean All-American.
So, yeah, I and then my unit sent me to instructor pilot course at Fort Rucker in 74. So I went down and went through that. Became an instructor pilot in the OH-58 at the time.
Wait, so you're an instructor pilot at Fort Bragg?
Yeah. At Fort Rucker, I went through the training. I come back to Fort Bragg, and then I got transferred to the 2nd Brigade, 82nd Airborne Division, and I was instructor pilot there.
So they were no longer doing instructor training down in Texas?
Oh, no, everything was at Fort Rucker then.
Well, no, the initial training, the warrant officer flight stuff, where you'd fly half the day. You said that was where all the helicopter training was at. I guess in that time they spread it out.
Initial helicopter training. The advanced helicopter training was all at Fort Rucker.
And now you're doing training at Fort Bragg?
After I went through the instructor pilot course, come back to Fort Bragg, and I could give the check rides, annual check rides and that to the pilots at Fort Bragg.
Oh, so it's like needing flight time. Like you have to, in order to maintain your jump status, you have to jump so many times.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have to pass a flight test every year, go through a complete oral exam on regulations, and the biggest thing is on the helicopter limitations and emergency procedures. Everybody's up on them. And then we got Hueys in our unit also. So I was an instructor in both the Hueys and the 58s. And then they sent me down to 18th Airborne Corps, still at Fort Bragg, which Fort Bragg was the headquarters of 18th Airborne Corps also.
I did not know that.
So I went down to the Corps Flight Standards. That's when I went around to all of the units on Fort Bragg giving evaluations. They would have to take a -10 test, which was basically the operator's manual for the aircraft.
Like PMCS type shit? The preventive maintenance checks and services where they had to make sure that the aircraft itself was in working order.
And then a couple of times while I was there, I had to rewrite the exam for that.
Rewrite like you had to redo the questions, or
yeah.
Okay. So you helped write the manual on it. in a sense, or
Not the
test.
manual
Well, the
itself,
test.
just a test on the manual. Did
And
all
this-
that after almost 6 years. I think it was 5 years and 10 months at Fort Bragg.
Just doing that administrative.
Well, and
And
a lot
flying.
of flying. I was talking to one of the warrant officer that help you get assignments and stuff like that. I told him I needed to get out of Fort Rucker or Fort Bragg after that long.
Get me the fuck out of here now.
And it came down that they're looking for a senior W-2 to go to Japan and fly with a flight detachment over there at Camp Zama. And he asked me if I thought I could, do that. So yes, I went over. I finally got that. Went to Japan for 3 years and was an instructor pilot and same thing at Rooker, standardization instructor pilot is where you gave the check rides to not only the pilots, but the instructor pilots.
So you were training the instructor pilots?
Yeah.
Big dog on
I wouldn't
base.
say training the instructor pilots, giving them their check rides and tests.
Okay, so they can stay up to date.
Yeah. And spent 3 years in Japan. Loved every minute of it because it was more like I guess what I called a civilian unit at that time.
Like a job.
They did medevac and VIP. We flew all sorts of VIPs, Air Force, Navy, Army, because it was the headquarters for, and I can't even remember what the headquarters was, but from Korea, Japan, and all that was.
What'd you say?
Pacific Command. That's command of all.
They had a
I
number
thought it was PACCOM.
at that time. For
I can't-
whatever,
I'm a CENTCOM guy. That's
whatever
right.
command it was. So, we had VIPs all the time. And we also had our duty to cover medevac. We would be on call for 24 hours. But we knew the day before, we also flew civilians, like the wives and kids of military personnel. Every day, probably 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the afternoon. In the morning, we'd take them to all of the clinics because it took so long to get anywhere driving in Japan. So I'm at Camp Zama. There was clinics at Yokosuka, which is a Navy base, Yokota Air Base, at Sugi Naval Air Base, and there's one other, I can't remember the name of that. It was Tachikawa. So we would go and pick up whatever appointments they had, the people. We'd fly them to where they needed to go. And then in the afternoon, go back and pick them up and bring them back to wherever we picked them up at. The biggest thing in Japan, we had Typhoon Tip come through while I was there. The Marine base was at the bottom of Mount Fuji.
I've seen
They had
pictures
the
of Mount Fuji.
barracks and everything there. And as the waters came down off of Mount Fuji, which I still can't figure out the logic here, they had these 500-gallon fuel blimps up, and the barracks were down here. The water came down, broke loose those blivets of fuel, caught fire and went through the barracks. We flew probably 8 o'clock that night till 6 the next morning, and the typhoon still wasn't all the way through. I mean, you fly out through the mountains out there to get to Mount Fuji. The rain coming off of Mount Fuji washed those blivets out, and when they disconnected, they caught on fire.
Yeah, during the rain.
Yeah.
At a Marine base, caught fire. Like, the rain wasn't putting out oil fire, obviously. But, like...
And all of this gas on fire went through the barracks because they were all restricted to the barracks because of the typhoon. So we flew burn patients from Mount Fuji to Eagle Air Base, where they were put right on probably a C5A at the time, and flown back to Fort Sam Houston at the burn center.
Damn.
They would stabilize them at Yokota Air Base at the hospital, and then fly them out.
There was no help in, like, Tokyo or nothing?
No. They immediately flew...
Did you imagine they'd fly into Seattle first?
Bird teams out of Fort Sam to Japan. So that was probably the biggest excitement that I had in Japan. Flying before the typhoon was done is like, flying in a hurricane before it's over with. In those Hueys, we were bouncing around all over the place in those mountains going up.
You shit yourself?
You
shit yourself?
Oh, no.
No.
Wasn't that bad.
I'm just flying around in a hurrcane.
It was a challenge.
That's fine.
It was a challenge.
So is the later levels of Pac-Man and Tetris, but your life's not at risk. So this is your Tokyo. What did you end up doing after Tokyo?
Went back to Fort Rucker, Alabama.
No.
And I got assigned to a unit where we instructed pilots again.
You can't escape that, can you?
Pilots that were out for 6 months or more, like they were out on in their degree. Back then, I don't know if they still do it or not, but the Army would pay for them to get out, and they'd go to school for a year or whatever.
It's the green to gold program, so you leave and you come back as a commissioned officer.
And then they would come back, and we would more or less give them refresher training on flying again. So I did that for about a year, and then I went through the instrument examiner's course, where you became an instructor for flying instruments.
I just hear a lot of schooling.
After about 6 months, I was assigned back to the course where I was an instructor at the instrument examiner's course.
So you're going to be an instructor the whole time?
Yeah. Yep.
Fuck that.
Actually, that was probably the most rewarding instructing that I did in the Army. Because if you didn't want to be there, they'd wash you out just like that. We had a lot of them that were sent there that really didn't want to go, and they go home very fast. But the ones that really wanted to be there, they would probably spend 3 hours every night after the training studying for the next day.
That would have been a washout. That would have been a washout so bad.
But that was the most rewarding because these pilots that wanted to get through it worked hard to get through it. And then in '84, I left Fort Rucker and went to Germany.
Where about?
I was in Schwäbisch Hall.
Say that.
It's about halfway between Nuremberg and Stuttgart.
Okay. Still.
Down in Bavaria. It's down in...
I've heard of those names.
Yeah. But I loved it in Germany. I got pictures. I got to fly over Neuschwanstein. That was the castle that Disney World or Disneyland, the castle they have, was designed after. Another thing I loved about Germany, every weekend there'd be a beer fest or a wine fest somewhere. Do the Volksmarch. You go out there and do the 5K, come back, beer, brats, music, party all the time.
Every day in every interview that I do like this, it just makes me wish I'd have gone into something else instead of truck driving.
We did have some guys over there that stayed in the barracks all the time and never got out to do anything. And there is so much history and everything in Germany with the castles, concentration camps, all of that stuff.
Never mind me.
Where did I say we were at?
You're in Germany.
I was in Germany, yeah. And we did flight checks of we probably had about 5 different bases. They had runways, they had radar approaches, and different approaches. We would flight check them to make sure they were okay and everything. And we flew different people around too from the unit. Like we would fly our colonel from Schwäbisch Hall to Heidelberg.
I had a friend at Heidelberg under 6-4.
Different meetings, stuff like that.
Never mind me. I'm just eating jalapeno cheese and tortillas.
Did you have much experience with the Soviets in Germany?
No. Now, when I was in Germany, my parents came over, which was a good thing. They came over, and it just happened to be the anniversary of the Passion Play. They only have it over there every so many years, but this was a certain year that they had the Passion Play, and I knew a friend of mine that was the recreation director for Germany over there, and he got myself, my wife at that time, and my parents. We all had tickets to the Passion Play, which was the big thing in Germany was the Passion Play.
What is the Passion Play about?
That is when they nailed Jesus to the cross.
Oh, like Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie?
Yeah. And they actually, I mean, this guy is something that they, and I mean, it's Oberammergau is the local town and the only people that can be in the Passion Play.
They're strict on their Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
And they're
only
Romans.
Those people from the town. I mean, you can't come from Heidelberg or somewhere else and come down there and perform in the Passion Play. It's all the local people from Oberammergau. And that was a big thing. Like I said, just visiting all of the castles. My kids over there, if you planned a trip somewhere, they were excused from school because of the history and the learning opportunity they had to going to different places was probably as good for them as the schooling. So they get excused from school. We go traveling to different castles, different places. So I was a W3 then, come back, went to Fort Rucker from Germany, and I worked with, it was kind of funny because the general of the post at that time was, he was a full colonel, frocked as a 1-star. And
it smells like shit.
When I was in Germany, he was the base commander, not in my unit, but the base commander of Schwäbisch Hall. And him and his wife, and me and my wife at the time, would bowl together. We were partners bowling and everything. So I knew, you kind of know him by first name. It was Rudy Ostovich. He was a 1-star back then. And when I got back to Fort Rucker, he was there. So I got assigned to a unit that we did all of the training and workup on the OH-58 Delta, Kiowa Warrior. Went through all of the training on it. Everything we flew to, I think it was Fort Smith, Arkansas. where we did training. We had OH-58s, OH-58 Delta, Apaches, Cobras. I guess that's about it. We were Task Force 1-112.
My editors are going to have a heyday with that, finding all the
We,
helicopters to put in the video.
we did the train up and proving of the OH-58 Delta. And, I mean, we did all sorts of lasering for the Apaches and the Cobras. And we went out to Hunter Liggett in California. That's just southeast of San Francisco. And we did all the training out there. Now, that's a place where you'd be out there sweating in the afternoon. When that sun went down, you better have a jacket because it was cold. I mean, it's just like a bitter cold. During the day, you can sweat.
All the viewers are probably looking at this shit like, what the hell is he doing? I'm eating an MRE. I got hungry. Chopper has one. He's got no, the actual whole MRE. He's got.
I gave raisins.
I gave him his choice, and he took the chili.
Anyway, we got through with the task force there. Another one of my commanders from Germany, the battalion I was with, the ATC battalion. He was the brigade aviation commander when I was back at Fort Rucker. So he got to speak at my retirement in end of August of '89. I retired as a W4.
So you just have friends in high places all over the place.
It helps to know them people. Then, after I retired, I taught flight school at Fort Rucker for 2 years.
As like a contractor?
With as a contractor. And we did the training in the OH-58.
What is
a lot of them, they would be tracked either as observation or utility or Cobras and stuff like that.
Well, OH is observation helicopter, right? So
yeah. So
what
they
is
were
the OH-58? Like, what's the layman's term for it? The non-nomenclature?
The Kiowa.
Okay.
And the D model was the Kiowa Warrior. That's the one that had the ball on top. It had laser and rangefinder and what do you call it?
It's just like shit.
You can see. It was designed so you could stay down below the trees. You had the screen where you could see. You could turn that around, find the target, laser it, and the Apache could
painting
launch a missile.
We just called it painting it. Like whenever you have a laser on something, it was so the airstrikes and stuff coming.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is bad. This is so bad. This shit's not supposed to expire. I think it's expired. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that away.
2 years after I retired, I was instructing the students there. And that was during the first Gulf crisis. Well, when that was over, they cut way back on this flight training. So I got laid off from the company there. And I was about 6 months laid off. That's when I started flying civilian EMS. Got a job with Air Evac up in Arkansas.
So even though you retired, you were still working, earning a second pension?
Yeah. I flew civilian EMS. We went up to, actually the office was in Level Plains, Missouri. First base I went to was Springdale, Arkansas, which is up by Fayetteville, Arkansas. So I flew there 206.
I don't know what that is.
Same thing as an OH-58.
Okay.
206 L1. And we'd pick up patients with that, fly around accidents and all that. Went from there to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Same thing, same company. And I went from there to Level Plains, Missouri, which was the headquarters, and I was the base commander of that base. Then there was another company was starting up a helicopter unit at a Level 1 trauma center in Johnson City, Tennessee. So I went over there and we trained up the nurses and paramedics at Johnson City. Stayed there for 3 years. Went from there to Melbourne, Florida. I flew there for maybe like 5 years. We got trained up in the EC-135, which was a Eurocopter, twin engine helicopter. It was a medium helicopter. Loved it. Picking up patients. Flight leader at the base here in Sebring, I got to know. So he got me down here to Sebring. Well, actually, back up Melbourne, started out flying a BL-105. It was a German helicopter, twin engine, smaller. Then I got trained in the BK-117, which was bigger, and it was twin engine. Then we got the EC-135, which beautiful aircraft. Pilot friendly, twin engine. You could fly on one engine. Nice aircraft. And again, when I flew the BK-117 and the EC-135, I went from here back up to Cordele, Georgia. The owner of the company he just had about 3 or 4 helicopters and a couple fixed wings. He was out of Augusta. The owner is the one who started the first ambulance service in Atlanta. And that's
ambulance
where he made
service or Airbus? Like,
no, ambulance service.
how old was that dude?
He was older, but I guess he owned it anyway. Millionaire. Tried to get tickets for, see if you could get us tickets for the Augusta for the golf tournament. Even as a millionaire, he could not get tickets.
I'm still stuck on the whole ambulance thing. It's like, I thought ambulance has been around since like the 1800s, something like that. I wouldn't expect that this guy in the 1900s, like, was it 70s, 80s? Well, actually, no. At this point, you're probably in the 90s now, right?
Mm-hmm.
To create the first ambulance service,
Or maybe the biggest. I don't know.
oh, so I figured they'd had ambulances. I watched cops growing up. I saw the ambulance.
Anywhere from there, I came back down. I worked at Tallahassee for a while. And then an opening came up down at Fort Myers. So I flew there in the EC-135 again for like 3 years. I've flown for 45 and a half years, close to 12,000 hours in a helicopter without an accident or incident. I think it's time to retire. I retired and here I am.
All right. Well,
Enjoyed it, every minute of it, and even enjoying every minute of retirement.
cheers to that.
Being at the VFW, I was commander at the VFW down here for 3 years, and I've been an officer there for probably the last 10 years, one kind or another.
All right, we're gonna cut the episode here. I hope you enjoyed the tale of Chief Warrant Officer 4 Dale Barnes, aka Chopper. Thanks for watching. Hopefully catch you in the next episode.